Slashing or Feeding Depression, the double-edged sword of social media. Do you love that title? I do. Slashing or Feeding Depression, the double-edged sword of social media. I think it would be pretty cool to start working with props. A sword would be pretty nice to have. When my oldest son was little, he had an awesome toy sword. It was Sting from Lord of the Rings, and it would glow blue whenever enemies were nearby. Now, fortunately, we didn't have a whole lot of orcs running around our neighborhood, but wouldn't it be really amazing to have a sword that could plunder the attacking anxiety? My son's Sting sword was really cool, but it was also really heavy. I guess to be able to glow and shimmer whenever an enemy is about to attack requires a lot of heavy things to make it possible. So my little 5-year-old had a difficult time swinging that sword, and it usually spent more time sitting on a shelf than it did keeping the gates of our home free from trolls and orcs. He'd proudly point to it in front of his friends and say, "Look, isn't my sword cool?" But not play with it a whole lot. I mean, I wish I had something that could tell me without a doubt that someone was nearby who meant me no good. That would be an awesome power. Anyways, I'm Lily. Welcome to Lily's Antidepressant Life, where I talk about all things related to depression. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more podcasts, and check out my blog at lilystrong.com. That's Lily with 3 L's, Lilly. Today's topic is social media. I love social media. Now, I'm not obsessed. I'm not a creepy stalker. I just have a healthy appreciation for what it brings to the table. Basically, I enjoy the connectivity that social media gives me. Now, I am older. I am 54 years old, and I have lived through hairbands and Sony Walkmans and the first car phones that were bigger than a thesaurus. Hello. So it shouldn't be a surprise when I tell you that I haven't always had the enjoyment provided by Wi-Fi and instant internet access. There were years when I was growing up when I depended on my mom for all the local gossip, and I'd have to find a payphone to call my dad to pick me up from the arcade. Those days are thankfully over, but it hasn't been too terribly long. And I know from my life experience that being unconnected isn't always a good thing. When I had my very first miscarriage, I had no idea what was going on. My husband was at work, my friends were all busy, and I was absolutely attacked out of nowhere by cascading hormones. I had no idea what it was. It was the first time I'd been pregnant, so I assumed they were just normal pregnancy hormones. I gotta tell you, it was the most miserable night. I was crying that big, ugly cry. Not the pretty one glistening tear on my cheek kind of cry, but the huge, loud, sobbing cry that sounded like a snuffleupagus was attacking the house. I was very isolated. I was very alone, and it ate away at me. If that were to happen to me now, I'd jump on Google so fast I might knock my keyboard off the desk. I'd be look up everything from symptoms to support groups. I'd jump on every social media platform there was, and might even consider creating one or two myself just to have that connection with other human beings. It's so important to have that. I feel just incredibly blessed to be living in these times with all our conveniences and technology. I remember watching an episode of Little House on the Prairie years ago, and Laura had a miscarriage. She was out working in the fields as she was trying to save the crops from a drought during a heat wave. It was horrible. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine living in those times. There was no phone, there was no instant access. She was out on the fields by herself. I like to think that now we're connected in a way with the rest of humanity, and so we're always able to reach out to break the silence of aloneness. So, since I'm a fan of social media, it's difficult for me when I hear all about the dangers of social media and how it can cause a lot of problems with depression and anxiety. It's difficult for me because I love social media. But on the other hand, I definitely can see the drawbacks as well. There's a lot of slashing and feeding going on. So I'm going to talk today mostly about how social media can be a tool for slashing depression. I assume nobody wants to hear how to feed our depression. I mean, I could go on and on for days about that, but I am the reluctant optimist, so I'd much rather share some of the good things. There is something important to note. It's essential to understand that correlation doesn't automatically equal causation. While social media can make depression bigger and worse, it isn't the cause of depression. If you are struggling with depression, please reach out for professional help. Okay, so I'm sure everybody already knows the negatives, but here's a list of ways social media can negatively impact those struggling with depression. Unrealistic comparisons. Social media often presents carefully curated and idealized versions of people's lives. I know this may come as a shock to you, but you can't believe everything you see on social media. We've all seen pictures of impossibly tiny waists, or too bright of blue eyes, or muscles that don't fit on a slender body. Continual exposure to these perfect images can lead to feelings of inadequacy and fuel the depressive thought cycle that reinforces a negative self-image. The clickbait I'm most susceptible to is the kind that says, "These influencers got caught with their real pictures." I love those, where they show the actual pictures before they were airbrushed or without filters. I also love the ones that are people who are just real people and they're not afraid to put themselves out there just as they are. They are awesome. I want to be that kind of person. Another problem is cyberbullying. Online criticism, shaming, and trolling can significantly exacerbate depressive symptoms. Social media sometimes offers anonymity that creates a space where hurtful comments and abuse really can flourish. I haven't really experienced what I would call cyberbullying firsthand, but once an article I wrote got really bad comments. And when I investigated, I realized that someone had taken one of my articles that I wrote and had run it through some sort of an AI thesaurus writing machine. There's that word thesaurus again. There's a theme. And out popped out this new article that was poorly written because every word I had carefully chosen had been swapped out with a mediocre replacement, which in turn changed the whole vibe and meaning of the piece. It really was kind of wild, and it made me think, hey, my writing's good enough to be stolen and ruined. That's something, right? So my carefully written article was remade into a disaster, and someone commented rather ruthlessly. But I didn't take offense since it wasn't even my writing at that point. But I was surprised at the hatred directed toward a piece which was written about an abused woman. It showed me how hiding behind anonymity gives some people boldness and maybe a touch of stupidity. They just say things I doubt they would say face to face. Okay, another negative is FOMO, fear of missing out. Constantly seeing posts of social events, gatherings, and experiences that are picture perfect that you're not a part of can deepen feelings of loneliness and isolation. There's also a decrease in real life interactions sometimes. Spent on social media can reduce your meaningful face-to-face interactions with real life people. And building connections in the real world is important for managing depression and a sense of well-being. This is one I'm very, very guilty of, is doom scrolling. Social media can bombard you with a constant stream of negative news and updates. Excessive exposure to distressing content can worsen an existing low mood and make it harder to manage depressive symptoms. Addiction and compulsive use. Believe it or not, social media platforms do not have your best interest at heart. They are designed to be addictive. Individuals with depression may be more vulnerable to getting caught in cycles of mindless scrolling and the instant gratification of likes and notifications, worsening existing mood patterns. Social media can also become an echo chamber, if you've ever heard that term. It's just repeating a thought that you have. So if you have negative thoughts, you might go and seek out things that reinforce those negative thoughts. Seeking out or being exposed to posts that validate low self-worth or feelings of hopelessness can strengthen depression. We don't want to strengthen depression. We want to slash it. Okay, enough of the negatives. Let's go on to the positives. As much as there are drawbacks, I have found social media can be incredibly powerful if used correctly, and I'm all about self-empowerment. So here are some of the ways I wield that power, like my own personal sword that can glow blue. Finding community. Online communities dedicated to mental health support offer a powerful opportunity to connect with other people experiencing similar struggles. Sharing experiences and feelings in a safe, supportive forum can combat isolation and make someone feel less alone. I'm a little embarrassed to admit to how many online communities I am a part of, but I like to look at it like I'm a very diverse person, and each group addresses a different need. I am part of a Parents of Autistic Children group, a lupus group, a grief group, a depression group, a writers group, a proofreaders group, and on and on. These communities are fabulous for addressing specific issues at pronounced times. Another great power of social media is breaking stigma. Open discussions on social media about depression help raise awareness and reduce stigma. Individuals battling depression may feel comforted and empowered by knowing others speak out about their experiences and challenges. And there's been a nice, strong trend of our perfect airbrush celebrities coming out and saying, hey, I have depression too. And it's just demystifying these problems. Another great thing is access to resources, information on depression management, mental health hotlines. Resources on finding therapists are widely shared on social media. And so it's great for people who are unsure where to go for their first step. this might help them to getting further help. There's also creative expression and coping mechanisms. There are social media outlets focused on sharing art, writing, and other forms of expression. Having a space to create and channel emotions can provide a productive coping mechanism for many managing depression. There's also finding inspiration and hope. While social media does have its pitfalls, there are also inspiring accounts, movements, and content focused on recovery and living well and overcoming mental illness. This positive messaging can bring moments of hope and optimism. This is the category I fall in. This is what I hope to bring to the table. Also, social media can cause a distraction, but sometimes it's a good distraction. Sometimes carefully curated social media feeds featuring nature scenes and lighthearted humor or inspiring videos can provide a welcome distraction from a low mood. Again, this is something I try to provide. I try to find things to share with y'all that I think might make you smile or brighten your day. Moderation is key, of course, and one should be mindful of the content that can be potentially triggering. Stay away. So, important considerations. Remember, social media is not a replacement for professional help. If you're struggling with depression, social media should be supplementary and not substitute for professional support. What that means is you can find a group for connection. You can Google symptoms. All these things are good for your understanding and they're tools in your tool belt, but they're not a replacement for professional support. That's what people suffering from depression and anxiety need, professional support. All right, so when we're talking about social media, it has to be individualized, an individual plan, because social media impact varies per person. One person's safe space could be triggering for someone else. So it's about recognizing how different interactions and contents make you feel. Here are some ideas on how to approach social media for support and positive effects without exasperating our struggles. So first, let's go over some mindful practices. Intentional usage. Okay, avoid mindless scrolling. Approach social media with a clear purpose. Checking in on a supportive group, seeking positive content, or sharing your own experiences if you feel comfortable. Have a reason for doing it. Time limits. Set clear time boundaries for social media. Use a timer or an alarm to restrict your sessions. I make sure I don't go on right before I go to bed because negative stories tend to bother my sleep. I've just figured out the times that work best for me. This is a big one. Curate your feed. Be selective about who you follow. You can unfollow or mute accounts that trigger negativity or comparison or FOMO. Seek out communities or individual people who make you feel optimistic, who bring something to the table. Here's another big thing for me. Turn off notifications. Stop the constant pull of notifications that are encouraging you to check out those platforms way more often than what is actually helpful. I turned off all notifications a few years ago and I couldn't be happier. I only look at social media when I want to, not when it calls me. Device-free zones. I know a lot of people are big with this. Establish spaces and times where your phone is excluded, perhaps in the bedroom, during meals, when you're interacting with your family. This helps regain and keep control because it gets easy to get stuck in that social media loop. Another thing you need to look out is content considerations. Look for connection, not comparison. Prioritize accounts or groups that provide support and validation and shared experiences. Find others who understand your struggles, not ones that are going to make you feel guilty. We have enough of that, seriously. Seek positivity. Actively seek for inspirational pages, images, stories, humor. I love quotes. I'm always on the lookout for quotes, just to have that little running sentence going through my mind. I love those. Limit news intake. Excessive exposure to negative news can spiral depressive or anxious thoughts. Be mindful of news consumption or set designated times for it. Personally, I watch the news in the morning, never at night. I prefer to catch up with social media in the evenings, never at night. I have a very clear path here. I have to watch what I do at night because I have nightmares. And so I have to be very intentional with what I'm doing. Make sure you're avoiding your triggers. Identify what can be a trigger for you and avoid it. Now, using social media as a sword to fight depression means you need healthy engagement. So that means you need to express yourself comfortably. If you feel safe and positive, share your experiences, but only in a supportive community. Don't go to one that you're pretty sure you're going to get negative thoughts on. Stay away from that. And be mindful of not dwelling only on negatives. Try to focus on small victories and coping mechanisms. Look for the positives. We can also all offer support. We connect with each other on a genuine level, and we can provide encouragement and validation for others. Step away when needed. If you notice increasing negativity, comparison, or you're just feeling more anxiety, log off. Be okay with taking breaks from social media. To go back to my story of my miscarriage, I found myself surrounded by well-meaning but misguided people. I had one friend tell me that it wasn't really a big deal to have a miscarriage and that they are so common, she expected she would have at least one or two. That is so not validating. That is not supporting. That dismissed my grief as unnecessary. One, it's not unexpected. I should have known it was coming. And two, she would have handled it differently. These are ridiculous. If this had been in an online format, this would have been a time for me to step away. That attitude was harmful and could have led me down the rabbit hole of increasing anxiety. Remember, the power is in our own hands. We can find our group, we can choose how much we interact, and we get to decide when we've had enough. Be intentional. Remember, it's about finding a balance and creating a digital environment that complements your emotional well-being. The journey may require experimenting with different approaches and strategies. Which brings me to reveal an undeniable truth. When social media triggers your negative emotions, bring back bad or painful memories, or have people just spewing viewpoints that clash with your own, you don't have to tolerate it. That's right. There are these magical shields called block and mute. And here's why you should unleash their power sometimes. You need to protect your safe space. Block or mute negative naysayers to create a bubble where you prioritize positive content and only supportive interactions. Prevent spiraling thoughts. When vulnerable, a single hateful comment, triggering post, or even stressful news can set off a chain reaction. Stop those triggers before they have a chance to derail your progress. Stop the comparison games. If certain accounts constantly make you feel less than, go ahead and mute them. You don't need to feel that way. You're wonderful. And this is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. There are no explanations needed. You don't owe anyone an explanation for curating your own digital space. Don't feel guilty or obligated to justify protecting yourself from online negativity. Remember, social media should be a tool you control, not something that controls you. It can be a positive space, but only when you are equipped to manage it. Don't be afraid to block or mute anyone or anything that diminishes your inner peace. This isn't about avoiding problems altogether, but prioritizing well-being by reducing unnecessary triggers. Trust your intuition. If your overall feeling after using social media is one of drained energy, sadness, or a negative view of yourself, listen to that instinct. It doesn't help if you have a sword that glows blue when you're getting attacked, if you keep it up on the shelf. You need to wield that weapon to protect yourself. All right, let's end on a terrible joke for the day, my favorite part. I wanted to follow my local fence company on Twitter, but they didn't have enough posts. I know, terrible, terrible, terrible. And that just makes me giggle. Hey, if you struggle with depression, discuss your social media habits with a therapist and create strategies for healthy usage. We all want to be stronger. We all have that capability. It's a power in our hands. For more stories, check out my blog at www.lillystrong.com. That's Lily with 3 L's, LILLYSTRONG. And subscribe to my YouTube channel to see more podcasts and daily smiles. I hope you all have a great day and keep smiling.